Is it possible that Matt Rhule could lose Mike Ekeler after just 1 year?
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, where the college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get in on the playoff action all playoff long. Head to FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost started today.
All right, welcome in. This is the Locked On Nebraska podcast. It is Wednesday. I'm Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone is with me. We appreciate your patience. We're coming to you a little bit later than normal today. Connor's got his new morning responsibilities on 1620 The Zone, so he is back from that, fresh off the radio. We could not record this last night because both of us were in attendance at college basketball games here in the state of Nebraska. We will discuss probably more in depth the game that I attended last night, Nebraska 90, Oregon 55. So that was a shellacking by Fred Hoiberg's team, which is now 17-0 as it goes back on the road to play Northwestern on Saturday. That is our topic for the second segment today. The third segment today, we are going to try to answer that question that Connor asked in the cold open. Could Matt Rhule lose Mike Ekeler to USC? That is out there in the media ethos. And yes, not to spoil the surprise, but yes, it is something that could happen. We'll get into that in depth in the third segment of this podcast. But first of all, portal headlines from Tuesday. Paul Mubenga from LSU is in for Nebraska with 2 seasons of eligibility. He is a left guard. He is 6'5", 317 pounds, originally out of Buford, Georgia. Graduated 1 season before Dylan Raiola arrived there in 2023. So Connor, the O-line for Nebraska and Geep Wade and Lonnie Teasley and Dana Holgerson is presumably, should we presume this, complete now with 3 portal ads in this 2026 haul.
Yeah, I think probably that'd be my guess. I wouldn't be surprised at hardly anything, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But you know, and you could never have too much offensive line help. So it'll be curious to see how they sort of view each of these guys, knowing that Evans is your starting center for sure, and you're pretty sure that Elijah Pritchett is going to occupy the left tackle spot, and that Brendan Black, the transfer from Iowa State, will be at the right guard spot. At least that's what we assume at this point. And then you have, some options at the other spots. You have Tree, you have Paul Mubenga, and I'm forgetting one person, right?
Yeah, so no, I think you got them all. Brendan Black at right guard. Let's go left to right. Okay. Elijah Pritchett at left tackle, Paul Mubenga at left guard, Justin Evans at center, Brendan Black at right guard, and then Tree Babalade at right tackle. So the South Carolina transfer. I could be completely butchering his name, but I think that's correct. I had some intel that is the correct way to say it here in the last few hours, so I'll trust that. But yeah, that's what Nebraska's got right now. And I would say that the odds are on the first weekend in September when Ohio University comes into Memorial Stadium. That's a September game, right? Not an August game. That Nebraska will line up with Pritchett, Mubenga, Evans, Black, and Babalade along the offensive line. But there are definitely players returning for the Huskers, starting with Gunnar Gatula, who's coming off of surgery, Tyler Kanak, who started in the bowl game, Sam Sledge, Grant Bricks. Nebraska is high on Preston Taumua, the sophomore who can play guard and tackle. So there are a number of players who who are going to be in contention for those spots. Gibson Pyle coming off of an injury, the interior lineman who was a big piece in that same class with Bricks and Sledge. So we're not going to get like too hyperbolic here, because we've done that and other people have done that about the offensive line in the past, and say now Nebraska finally has a Big Ten worthy offensive line. This is an offensive line that can compete and take Nebraska to the top half of the Big Ten offensively. Like, we're not going to do that because we've been burned by that before. But yeah, it's pretty good when you add 3 Power 4 potential starters in the first 10 days, 12 days of the new year.
Yeah, well, I don't know. It's good to get the bodies. I don't know that it's good. I mean, like it's way too early for me to say if it's good or not. I mean,
well,
these guys,
not good that you're in the position to have to do that.
Right. I just mean whether the production on the field will be good. I just don't know that there's any way to know. I mean, the guys that they're adding have had, it's there's a little experience there, but there's some on and off starting. There's some bad, Pro Football Focus grades, just like there was for Pritchett last year. There is, injury history and all these different things. So like, Nebraska's got to find the right combination. You hope that, it's a similar thing along the defensive line, which I know we're going to talk about in a second. Like, you're adding in a couple new guys there, pairing them along with people that you're bringing back, and a new coach. And, we'll see what happens with that too. So they needed to add bodies, and they didn't go out and get, a $1.5 million tackle or anything like that. They got replacement level players, and that's okay. That's not a bad thing, but I don't know how good they're going to be.
Correct. I think the player in the group that they've added who has the most experience, I know, is Brendan Black, the guard coming from Iowa State, 3 years of starting experience. And you might expect that coming from Iowa State, he would have more starting experience or have had the opportunity to start more than the two linemen coming from the SEC. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see, like, how does a Big 12 incoming offensive lineman stack up in Nebraska, what Nebraska's asking of him versus a couple of players coming in from South Carolina and LSU and the SEC, and who don't have as much experience. Mubenga started 11 games over 2 years at LSU, dealt with some injuries after redshirting in his first year. So he's an experienced guy, like, heading into his 4th year of college football. And we'll talk more about the offensive line, I'm sure, when we know what Nebraska is going to have running behind that offensive line, and as we discuss Anthony Calandria and how his skill set might fit what Nebraska's trying to do up front on the offensive line. Some lines, as we've seen, are fully serviceable against the run, and then a disaster when you drop back to pass. That's a little bit of what Nebraska dealt with in 2025. And it's a bit early to say what the strengths and weaknesses of this group up front might be. I would say a strength potentially is that there are options, and there is depth, and there are pieces, and you always have injuries that you deal with on the O-line. We're at the start of an offseason. Nothing's even happened yet. So they do have options. And it's funny that I said 2 minutes ago, well, this is probably going to be the starting line, these 5 players come game 1. I mean, you could have all kinds of stuff happen in spring practice or OTAs or training camp that caused Nebraska to have to go to what are perceived as backups now. And the good thing for Nebraska is that it has players there. You're not tapping into the reserves of, what were once your walk-ons in order to fill those spots if need be.
That's true. Yeah, I think people would feel at least decently comfortable with putting Tyler Canuck in a game or putting Gunnar Gatula in a game at this point. So that's not that crazy to think about. The other thing that I think is worth mentioning here is, it's the first year with Geep Wade. It's the first year for these guys at a new program. And what happens is you come in and it's hard at first, and it's not about the individual talent on the offensive line. It's about how the offensive line plays, right? Like, it's great to have a first round pick, which Nebraska doesn't have, but if the other side of the line is giving up 15 sacks, then no, it doesn't work like that. So it has to be all one together. And that takes time under a new coach, and everybody's learning each other. So, not to have a built-in excuse there, but it is, it doesn't happen overnight.
I'm going to say something that a lot of coaches say, and that football is the ultimate team sport. And in what that means is you are as strong as your weakest link. And that doesn't just include like the 5 pieces on the offensive line. It can include position groups within an offense, and then it can include every, the 3 different aspects of the team, from defense to offense to special teams. And Nebraska was as strong as its weakest link in 2023 and 2024 when the weak link was special teams. And then Nebraska at the end of the 2025 season was only as strong as its weakest link, which was the defense. And it brought everything down within the structure of the entire team because the defense struggled so much to stop the run, and then struggled to stop everything in the bowl game against Utah. So bringing in all new coordinators, as Nebraska did a year ago, and remaking the leadership and the personnel this year of the offensive line, like, those things have ramifications even when the talent and the potential is there. So it's something to watch for sure. They're going to have to focus quite a bit on getting that group up to speed, even if they have, which I think they have, upgraded the talent level.
All right, let's take a quick step aside here. We'll come back and talk about the still undefeated Nebraska ball team after this. But first, a word from the FanDuel Sportsbook. There is just one college football playoff game remaining next Monday, Indiana and Miami in the national championship, and FanDuel is giving you ways to get on the action when that game is going on. There's profit boosts on game day, so expect that. But of course, get your thoughts in beforehand, and you could put your money toward it if you have a hunch right now. You get some advanced numbers on that. And then as we get closer to the game, and then of course on game day as well, which is where some of the profit boosts come in for you to play. So when you head over, check out FanDuel. It's going to pay out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. It's the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. Head to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. All right, welcome back. Nebraska basketball shellacked Oregon by 35 points on Tuesday night. That is Dana Altman's Oregon Ducks. They are 17-0. They have won 21 games in a row.
Wow.
21 games in a row. And I mean, the train ain't stopping anytime soon.
When are we just going to give all credit to Cale Jacobson for this? There was a point on Tuesday night where I'm trying to decipher, like, what's going on? Like, what's the most interesting thing that's happening with the Nebraska basketball team right now? And I was thinking that out loud, and was having various text conversations throughout the game, like with all different like dichotomy of people. There were like my relatives in California who are just tuning into the fact that Nebraska has a basketball team, and were sending me messages like, does the arena always have people in it like that? And I didn't know that Sam Hoiberg had a twin brother and things of that nature. And then there was like a neighbor, like baseball parent that I have spent time with over the past many years, who is texting me like, I don't believe this is true. I can't believe what I'm watching. I believe that Nebraska basketball and like the college basketball world is just trolling all of us with what's going on here. And then, also some conversations about like, how is Nebraska this good defensively? It was all over the map. And, as I'm engrossed in some of these conversations, at one point, Cale Jacobson just took over the game. And it was when Nebraska had built quite a lead, and he's in there, and I'm looking around the court, and I'm like, this guy is 6'4", he's playing in the post against Oregon, which has got some big dudes down there, and they're great rebounders, and he's holding his own. And then they get on offense, and he's like controlling the action. He's making threes. He's driving to the bucket. Like, what is going on in the world that we ended up with Cale Jacobson, who is a great story as a fourth-year player out of Ashland, Nebraska, who has earned a scholarship. But the fact that he's taking over a game like this on a Tuesday night with the number 8 ranked team in the country playing, Dana Altman's taken Oregon to the Sweet 16 5 times. Like, and there's Cale Jacobson. So I don't know. My head's spinning.
I get it. Like, but I'll think about, I think about it this way, guys like him and like Sam Hoiberg, they always find ways to impact the game because they don't care, they don't know how big or small they are, and they don't care how many points a game they like should be averaging or anything like that. They're just like, let me do whatever role that fits us best, and I will do it 100% with 100% of my mind and my body. Like, and that's been Cale Jacobson always.
And you can just see with Jacobson and with Hoiberg how much the game has slowed down. Like, they're veterans, and they're smart in the way that they play. They're confident, very confident right now. And it looks like they're playing at a different speed than most of their opponents. It certainly did in person on Tuesday night. Like, Oregon was without its point guard, and that was Jackson Shellstad. That was a big detriment for Dana Altman's team, no doubt. And so the players who were forced to handle the ball for the Ducks were not comfortable doing that. You had Jeremy Lin's brother, by the way, which was cool. Wei Lin. He's pretty good. But he was no match for Sam Hoiberg and and Cale Jacobson and Jamarcus Lawrence and all of the others on the Nebraska side who, like you said, don't care what they're supposed to be able to do or not supposed to be able to do. They're just out there dominating.
It's crazy what happens when I mean, I definitely am thinking about a certain other team at Nebraska when I say this out loud, but it's funny what happens when you have a system and you play to it and you recruit to it and you get a bunch of guys who buy into it, and it actually doesn't matter how much talent you have. It actually doesn't matter how much NIL money you have. You just have a system and you play really hard to it. And so credit should go to Fred Hoiberg, obviously, but also Nate Linzer, because, he's the architect of this defense and he understands what they need. And they've been able to fine tune that really well over the last couple of years, putting different guys in different spots. And I think they've got the perfect formula, and they have a whole bunch of dudes who are just super even keel and they play friggin' hard every night. And that is a great basketball team. That's going to win you a lot of games.
I was walking down the stairs from the media seating area. And by the way, this is the first game I've attended this year at PBA, which is embarrassing, but it's just the reality of it. I didn't get to a game in December because I was busy with other stuff, and I intended to go on January 2nd when Michigan State came to town, but it was icy and I had no sleep and had just gotten back from the Sugar Bowl. So, woe is me. But so I made it last night for the first time. And after the game, first of all, I was worried that I was going to be the jinx and they were going to lose, and I was never going to be allowed back into Pinnacle Bank Arena, but that didn't happen. Instead they hit 17 3-pointers, and so I'm going back next Wednesday. But I was walking down the stairs from the media seating area, which is at the top of the lower bowl, and Robin Washut, who was at every game, home and away, was walking next to me, and I just turned to him and said, "What's it like to cover the best college basketball team in the country?" And I don't even mean that jokingly. It's not that Nebraska should be ranked number 1, or that Nebraska should be the odds-on favorite to win the national championship. Like, I don't think any of that's going to happen. But when you just talk about team and getting the most out of themselves and playing the best brand of basketball that they can together, like, who's better than Nebraska?
Nobody.
Who out there is getting more with what they have than Fred Hoiberg?
Oh, absolutely nobody. There's no doubt about that one. There are other teams who are playing really, really good basketball who are really talented, and they're getting a lot out of their group. But as far as what Nebraska has, or what people thought they were going to be, to what they turned into and what they are right now, yeah, no bigger gap. No way there's any bigger gap.
They're a long way away, and we're not gonna get this carried away. They're a long ways away. So I just want to be clear about this, from accomplishing what Indiana has in football. Indiana went to the college football playoff, one of the last 12 teams standing in its first year under a new coach, and is probably going to win the national championship on Monday. And even if it doesn't, they made an undefeated run to the national championship game. So Nebraska has a long way to go to catch up to the accomplishments of Indiana football. But what Nebraska is doing that's on par with Indiana is, so you hear it when Matt Rhule talks, and he just like brings it up. He brings it up without being asked about the subject. That, well, I know people want to know how come Indiana can do this and you can't. Why does Indiana make it look so accomplishable, so easy? Easy is not the right word. And there is this great source of frustration that Curt Cignetti in Indiana are creating among other coaches and fan bases around the country, because everyone wants to know, if they can do it, why can't you do it? And now this is at least the second time after a game where I've seen, and I saw it in person last night, a head coach from another team come into the interview and basically just lament the fact that his team was terrible. and it smacks a little bit of the Indiana conversation. Like, I don't know why we're not as good as them. They kicked our butts. Like, it's embarrassing. That was Greg Gard from Wisconsin a few weeks ago when his team lost by 30. And that was Dana Altman last night when the Ducks went down by 35. He almost got out of the press conference in like 3 minutes. I don't know if you got to hear any of it. He almost got out of there in like 3 minutes without being asked anything about anything. Like, the first couple of questions were about, like, what'd you think of, the specific situations in the game? Like, it was tied 28-28 and then Nebraska went on a run. What happened there? Why didn't you guys get the second chance points that you were looking for? Just basketball questions. And I didn't want to ask him about that. I wanted to ask him like something big picture. And they tried to end it. Like, it was 2 minutes in, and their media relations guy was like, all right, Dana's done, let's go. And he started to stand up, and fortunately I was able to, like, whoa, hold on a second. Like, yeah. Can you answer a question about like what you just saw out there? Like, he's coached against Nebraska 30 times as a head coach. Like, and he did. And he was gracious and talked about Nebraska, said he thought that they'll get the monkey off their back this year. And then he just tore apart his own team and said that it was embarrassing, and that he's sure that Oregon fans are going to be coming for blood soon.
He said, "Oh, I don't know, probably something like that."
There was like some kind of Dana-ism that I heard in that answer, and I can't remember now what it was.
Yeah, and no schneesh. But he said that he didn't want to jinx him, but then maybe jinxed him in the process. So maybe there was a wink in there.
I want to jinx them.
They don't want to jinx Nebraska, but I think they're going to do it this year.
Do you know what his record is against Nebraska in 30 games as a head coach? So he had 9 at K-State, and he's had 4 at Oregon. So 17 at Creighton in 17 years.
I'm gonna say 500.
Exactly. That's exactly right. He's 15-15, and probably doesn't even need to be said. That was his worst loss ever against Nebraska yesterday.
That feels right. Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break. Come back. We'll talk about that subject that we teased at the beginning of the show. Is Matt Rhule about to lose his special teams coordinator? That is coming up next. All right, we're back. Wednesday episode of the Locked On Nebraska podcast. I just got a question at the Locked On Nebraska Twitter account. LO Nebraska is where you can find us there. And somebody said, well, maybe they just came straight to me, asked if we were just punting on the show today, and I said no. We just had a little bit of a delay. It'll be up by early afternoon on Wednesday. If you're hearing this, then that doesn't need to be said. But we'll try to post most of the time in the mornings here for you all out there. This last night presented some difficulties. We could have done a show. I got home about 11:30 p.m. last night. We probably could have done a show at midnight, which would have been somewhat problematic for you since you have to be on the air at 6 a.m. And we didn't want to do a show before Nebraska played the basketball game because then we wouldn't have been able to talk about it. So here we are coming to you midday edition of the Locked On Nebraska pod. But most days we should be able to get you a show out early in the morning.
Yeah, get ready. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge doing it consistently, which I feel bad about, but life gets in the way sometimes. So we'll get you pods. Don't worry.
Yeah. All right. What's going on with Mike Ekeler? So some reports out of Los Angeles have indicated that Nebraska's second year now, special teams coordinator, Nebraska native, came home a year ago from Tennessee, rejoiced in the fact that he would be close to his aging parents, got the kids in college. This was seemingly going to be the place where Ekeler could kind of spend some time, some extended time for one of the first stretches of his career. He's moved around a lot in his life as a defensive coach and a special teams coordinator, and often, which is different than most coaches who move around a lot. Many of the times, including his move from Tennessee to Nebraska last year, it was of his own doing. He didn't get let go. It wasn't with a regime change. He chose to make a move, and he may be choosing to make another move because Lincoln Riley is definitely going after him to try to pry him away from his home state.
Yeah, scary stuff. I mean, kind of crazy that this comes up. I'm sure it would come as a pretty big. I mean, they know about it now, obviously, but it would come as a pretty big surprise to Matt Rhule and his staff, who
a blow.
I'm sure, I bet they probably, tried to get him in position to make him secure here. And I don't know if that hasn't happened yet or sort of what he wants. I guess that's the main question. What does Mike Ekeler want? Does he want to be a special teams coordinator? Does he want to be a position coach? Does he want to not be in Nebraska anymore? Does he want to be in Nebraska? Like, I think there's a lot of arms to this thing, but it does seem quite possible as we look at it right now.
Yeah, it's just hard to know what's going on in his head, and I think most people are kind of giving him a little bit of space in this moment. I mean, I certainly haven't called him or anything to say, hey, what do you, we'll know when he decides, I think. And, Matt Rhule was not, I didn't see Matt Rhule at the basketball game last night. Maybe he's burning the midnight oil with his contract people and trying to find a way to keep Ekeler at Nebraska. If it's even about that, Ekeler was well compensated in his first year at Nebraska. It could be, maybe he wants to work with Lincoln Riley. Who knows? Some coaches, and this is not, I'm not justifying this. It would be a huge loss for Matt Rhule. Let's just say that. And it would not be good for Matt Rhule. It would be a red flag. Call it what it is. If you lose, I think what we would probably consider to be one of the top 3 hires that Matt Rhule has made in all of his time at Nebraska. Some might put it number 1 with the way that Ekeler turned around a special teams group that needed badly to be turned around here in his first year on campus. And he brought a completely different attitude and culture to Nebraska special teams that I think if given more time could be something that would settle in and permeate into other areas of the team. So if that doesn't get the opportunity to happen, it's a big loss for the Nebraska football program. I also recall that Rhule has said things like, and this was in the lead up to the bowl game, and I don't think it was in any way in anticipation that Mike Ekeler would jump after this season, but he said, we're going to coach special teams the way that Mike Ekeler has taught us to coach special teams long after the day that he's gone. And that was just, it may not have been, I'm paraphrasing, like Ekeler.
Yep.
And at that moment, Rhule may have expected that Ekeler would outlast him at Nebraska. But if Ekeler were ever to go, is probably what Rhule meant. They weren't going to change the way that he coached special teams. So you'd probably have like an Ekeler protege or something who takes the thing over. He did bring some staff with him from Tennessee, and who knows if Ekeler chooses to jump to USC, if he would take those coaches with him, or if one of those guys might get an opportunity for a big bump in pay and take over Nebraska special teams. It's also interesting that Ekeler has recruited 2 players, all his own doing, straight from down under, in Archie Wilson and then Michael Sarazikas, the kicker who came over just in the class that signed last month. So college football is a weird business. Coaching is a weird business. And sometimes I'm not saying he's going to go. He might decide that Nebraska's where he wants to be. Sometimes there are coaches out there who just kind of live off of the energy and the adrenaline of they get addicted to moving around. And I don't know if that's the case with Eck, but it's certainly his track record is to not stay places all that long.
That's true. I mean, so to go back to your red flag point, I mean, I certainly on the face, that's what it looks like. If one of the best coaches on your staff just up and leaves after 1 year, and he seems to be pretty well liked. I guess the other side of that equation is what you just said. Like, if he's a guy that just likes to move, or if he's a guy that hypothetically wants to coach a position or something like that, and Nebraska can't offer either of those things to him. Nebraska obviously is in Nebraska, and they can't, right? Their staff is full elsewhere. Then is it, I mean, what's the rub here? Like, I don't know. It's just bad to lose him because he's a good coach. You don't want to lose that guy off your staff. But if there was nothing you could do, then there was nothing you could do. I don't know. And we're talking about this in the past tense, like it's happened, which it has not, at least at the time of recording this, by the way. So there's a lot of different arms to this, and I'm curious to see if it indeed happens, what is sort of said about it by both sides.
Yeah. All right. Let's preview quickly the rest of the week for Nebraska. Here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast, we'll have a show on Thursday to cover the news of Wednesday. As we're halfway through Wednesday right now, there have been no big announcements on Wednesday. We'll see what the next 12 hours or so bring. And then on Friday, we'll have our mailbag show. So get those questions in by Thursday afternoon, and we will get you loaded up for the mailbag on Friday. You can send those to lockedonneb@gmail.com. For Nebraska, the rest of the week, as of Thursday, the period in which players can visit campus reopens. So the dead period will end, and Nebraska can start to bring some portal prospects back onto campus, and we can expect that they may continue to try to bulk up things on the defensive line with another addition there, or does Nebraska start talking to running backs? That's the big question.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to start soon, right? So we'll see who pops up on campus and some of the names that emerge. But I imagine that's going to be moving pretty quickly pretty soon here.
Nebraska might be in a position where it feels like it can be selective at running back. There are a lot of players who would look at what Emmett Johnson did in Nebraska's system this past year and say, yeah, I would. I think they're in a position to be selective, and they're in a position to maybe recruit that spot a little bit differently than they have the offensive and defensive lines in the secondary or the wide receiver position. You see around the country the schools that can be selective with their entire portal class just operating differently. Like Ohio State was very quiet in the portal for the whole first week of activity. And then over the weekend, last weekend, they just said, all right, you, and you come to Ohio State. Here's what we're going to pay you. Here's the contract. thank you very much. We'll make the announcement tomorrow. And Oregon has kind of done some of that same stuff. And that's kind of what happened with Dylan Raiola. So maybe that's what's happening with Nebraska at the running back spot. They feel like they're an attractive destination because they just had a first-team All-American, or maybe there's a player out there that isn't yet in the portal that the Huskers are waiting on. I don't know, but the answer, I sure hope for their sake, is not we're just going to stand pat.
I would hope that it's the latter. I would hope that they got something cinched up already as far as a player they're interested in, and not just sitting back and relying on, hey, look, we got a 1,000-yard rusher. You would be lucky to be here. Like, I hope it's not that. But I guess we'll see.
Just playing out all the scenarios in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. I hope they have something thought about at this point.
All right. Let's get out of here. Get this thing posted. We'll be back with you on a short turn on Thursday. And then, as I said, the Friday mailbag. Thanks for tuning into the Locked On Nebraska podcast today. Be sure to check us out always. And for those of you who are watching on YouTube, we are now going to send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And on audio, make sure that your second listen is the Locked On College Football Show. Thanks for joining us today.